But the opportunities that keep revealing themselves to me in ways in which they've helped people, from like seeing your show help me finally have a conversation with my mother about her addiction and how it affected our family, you know, all the way to helping somebody find treatment, right? Like all these sorts of ways in which the work is working on others, because it first worked through me. And I said, yes, you have to say yes to the calling, and then you have to get to work. You have to show up for it, even when you resist it, because there's a lot of resistance. But you got to show up for it knowing. And I think that's one thing that's really powerful within me. I'm anchored to my why, and my why is to be of service to others. I want people to find recovery, whatever that means for them. I want people to pursue whatever dream they have on their heart, whatever calling is on their heart. I want people to thrive, you know? Not just survive. Yes, we'll help you get to that point of surviving, but I want you to thrive. I want you to do well. I want you to be happy.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your hosts, Bryce III, he, him pronouns.
Liz McKean, she, her pronouns.
Liz.
Bryce.
That's the sound of two co-hosts that haven't co-hosted anything for the past 90 days.
Oh my God, it's been not 90 days, but it's been a lot of days. It feels like 90 days. Feels like a long time.
Here in Alaska, it feels like 90 days. So, you know. Yeah, how's your energy?
Mine is, oh my gosh, all I can think of is what our buddy Brian Sims, who we talked to earlier today, who's a podcast guest. If you haven't heard his episode, by the time you hear this one, it will have posted. Go check him out. But Brian was laughing at the way we respond. He's like, I really like that Liz just doesn't like try to say she feels good if she doesn't feel good. But I do feel good today. I'm excited. I'm glad to be back with you. It feels nice to be like kind of rested from podcasting. Like, you know, as much as I love doing this, it's, you know, it's a lot of energy output. So it's nice to have a little bit of a rest so that we can come back to it feeling really excited, and couldn't be more excited for the person we're going to interview, who we'll introduce in a moment. But just a beautiful homecoming is how it feels. How about you?
First of all, thank you for sharing all that. And I think it's important that we're open and honest about what it is that we're experiencing when we experience it, because you kind of encourage transparency along the board. So people hear this and it's like, okay, when I'm asked how am I don't have to say fine and then keep moving, you know? And to have that translate into like a work meeting, you know, that's pretty dope that this is a culture that exists. Yeah. As far as my energy goes, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm back in the crib with internet. I didn't have internet for a while, so that was a big reason why we wasn't able to record. I'm not as not fresh off of recording as Liz is, because I've done some live podcast recordings that we're excited to get posted up, and maybe y'all are here before this episode, or maybe not, who knows. But I'm really excited about this conversation today. This was somebody that we met recently. We were in Boston doing some strategy at the Boston HQ, the Phoenix Boston HQ, and the conversation that me and this person had immediately upon meeting each other, and even when this person came into this virtual room, like we said some things that just aligned with our lives that like we didn't even know that there was a connection there. So I'm excited to see how this conversation fleshes out. Here today, we have Elizabeth Addison. What's up, Elizabeth?
What's up, Bryce? Hey, Liz.
Hi. We're so happy to have you here, Elizabeth. Long time coming.
I'm so excited to be here. You all have like such a wonderful energy about you. There's an excitement. There's like a relationship where you're there. Like it seems like y'all are friends, like for real. Even upon meeting you at the Phoenix, seeing how y'all took care of each other, Liz was like, Bryce needs food. I'm like,
I forgot about that.
I did need food.
Oh, that's amazing. I do like to feed people.
It's wonderful to have you here. How is your energy today?
My energy, you know, upon getting here, it was a bit chaotic, and I expressed that to y'all. And now, you know, after talking with y'all for a minute, I feel a lot more grounded. I feel a lot more like, okay, just breathe, Elizabeth. And that is a delicious space to be in because then so many beautiful things can arise from that sort of space. So I'm grateful that upon entering, it was like, how are you doing? How's your energy? It's like chaotic. Okay. let's get grounded, you know? So yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling grounded. I'm grateful.
Love to hear it. And it's always an honor to be in spaces where like that can be the energy, and that's the conversation. And a lot of times too, like when it comes to podcasting or anything, you know, production value wise, people show up and there can be a lot of like spastic, hectic energy because there's this inclination that I'm supposed to be away or I'm supposed to show up as away. And in recovery, man, like there's no more supposed to's. It just is what it is. And the more we try to force the supposed to's, the weirder it gets and the more spastic it gets. But every time, at least for me, I can speak for myself, that I've found peace is when I've been able to come home, and home is whatever it is that I am in this moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. And what a gift that is. And what a, you know, hearing you talk about that in terms of your own recovery also makes me go, I'm so grateful that you had that for yourself, you know? And like a lot of the work that I do, you know, the goal is to get people to have that for themselves, you know? Because in my experience early on, I was told how to recover and it didn't necessarily align with how I was meant to recover. Though I'm very grateful and I got a lot of tools, a lot of great, fantastic stuff that I still look to. I think, when the time that I got permission to find what recovery was for me, when I got that permission, then things shifted in a way that I could be at peace and grounded in my own recovery and therefore hold space for everybody else's recovery, no matter if it looked different than my own.
That is such a beautiful way to describe, I think, an experience that a lot of people have, that like being told how to recover. And then that moment of freedom where you open that up and open up your definition of recovery, maybe open up your what the destination looks like for you in addition to the pathway. And if you don't mind expanding on that a little bit, I would just love to hear more about your experience there, like the being told. Because I also think, you know, for me anyways, there's certainly times, especially in recovery and during active addiction, that like it's really helpful to just be told what to do. It's very helpful to be like, you know, this is the next step to take. You know, it's not always a bad thing because I think sometimes that can be framed as a bad thing. And then there's definitely a moment where it's like, oh, I can trust myself to take the next step and there's something inside of me guiding me now. So I just would love to hear a little more about that experience.
And I just want to reflect on something really quickly. And you all may hear me go, a lot during this as it's something resonates with me and I feel it in my spirit and my body. It took to 2020 for me to be able to say that I trust my recovery. Like I truly trust it, you know? And like what you were saying was about that sort of needing for people to tell you what to do initially. Yes, yes, yes. I really needed the guidance. I really needed the fear of going back out. You know, I needed some of that instilled in me so that I would keep moving forward. You know, I went to like 5 different detoxes. I was in a psych ward. I don't know if that's the right way that they say it now, but that, you know,
when I was in one, it was. So I'm
okay.
That was my experience too. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, my addiction just took me in places where I was, and it hurts my heart to say this now, but I have to be honest, I didn't want to wake up. I was angry that I woke up. You know, I just wanted the pain to end. And so when treatment became available to me, when I found out about residential treatment, though it took me a minute to go, I finally went and it saved my life. It saved my life, right? What I learned there, I still learn today, but I think that a lot of it was rooted in the sort of TC model, which is a therapeutic community, which is we break you down to build you back up. So a lot of like, it was very punitive. It was fear-based. It was a little bit scary. It was a little bit like, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
Like I'm not shit. You know, you're just a dressed up garbage can was the thing that people said, you know? that you're an alcoholic and you're only going to ever be a fucking alcoholic.
Wow.
Like there was some stuff that was said, and also upon reflection, and I've written a musical about it called This Is Treatment. And so I've really dug into what that experience was like and what that experience continues to be like still. And that's why part of my work is helping a local hospital, an organization, like change the game for treatment. But we can get to that later. A lot of it really was reinforcing what I already felt about myself while also trying to build me up in some way. And it was sort of seen through the lens of like, we are loving you. So it was a bit toxic. And also just, there was a lot, there was a lot in terms of recovery orientation, in terms of like ways in which to look at people as resources and looking through the lens of strength-based and all those. They weren't there. It was all about our weaknesses. It was all about, and I think that it was too early for us to be given a lot of responsibility, like take care of the house and like all sorts of things. They're like, please show me how to not drink and then stay not drinking and help me learn to love myself. Please,
Yeah.
And I think that, again, I hold space for it. Saved my life. I'm so grateful for it. And it taught me a lot of things. And it took a long time for me to find a way to love myself through all of that and not hold on to these ideas that I was just sick and that I was diseased and I was just an alcoholic and all those sorts of things.
Yeah. I've had a similar experience. I listened to this guy, Tiger Singleton, and he's pretty dope. And he had said something, I'm taking like this 30-day course by him. And he had said something like, all we're trying to do here is use words to convey a truth that can't be conveyed in words, but we can, like the human condition is to continue to try to like find words so that we can communicate it to each other. And I'm like, words are magic for me, and they're very powerful, and different words have resonated for me in different seasons. And so the I'm sick, or like I'm diseased, or I'm an alcoholic. This is what I naturally do. Is my inherent. This is how it is. Like when you get down to the core of it, that's what it is. So I got to protect. And something's out there doing push-ups, waiting for the alcoholic in me to and like that worked for me. And I know it's worked for a ton of people, and it doesn't work for me because I've changed, I've grown, and so now that language doesn't resonate anymore. And like we're allowed to have growth, we're allowed to unfold, and maybe, and I can see how that language wouldn't resonate with someone from the get-go. So how did you take that which was given to you and use it to find the language that resonated with you?
And I just want to reflect on something you said, Bryce, first, is that's the distinction, right? Is that initially, these things save our lives. They really help. They humble us, all sorts of things. These things we needed. So many of us needed it. Not everybody. Some people, it probably pushed them out the door, unfortunately, But for us, we needed that. And then at a certain point, when we started to get uncomfortable, or we felt like we needed to change, we needed to grow, we needed to expand and all those sorts of things, we needed, at least I'll speak for myself, I needed someone to give me permission to grow out of what initially saved my life so that I can go from surviving to thriving, right? And so for me, it took a long time. It took a long time of sort of just this inner struggle, right? Because for me, and I the first year to about 2 years, I did do the 12-step fellowship. But then, just for me, and I only speak for myself and my experience, is that I started to actually want to use during meetings and when leaving meetings. It actually was having the opposite effect. I felt worse. And I felt like I can't do it the way that you have laid it out, so I'm not worth it, right? Because I can't work it. And then also people said some harmful things to me, things that I couldn't express, like talking about, antidepressants that I was on at the time and the fear of wanting to get off and then being pulled up. You can't talk about that here. These certain things that just sort of didn't sit right with me, but I didn't know any other way. I thought there was just something wrong with me. You know, luckily, I had my musical already, right? Like I started my musical 9 months out of when I was 9 months into recovery. And so because of that, I had some sort of anchor, like I had a sense of purpose. Like I need to write this thing. I need to do this thing. It for me at the time, it was like, well, your life was worth saving because you have to do this thing, right? This is what God has given you to do. So that was very beneficial initially, right? But I was attaching my worth to my work, which over time, that doesn't work. But again, initially it worked. And so for me, a couple of saving graces, you know, there was this theater company called The Improbable Players that a lovely Andy Short was a part of. And I was an actor with him for a while. I couldn't stand him when I first met him. And then I just grew to love him. You know?
Shout out Andy.
And I cannot wait to like see him in LA or wherever, whenever I get the chance to see him and work out with him. But they like brought in theater and recovery and then performance, which I had been missing through my active addiction and even prior, because I was very afraid of pursuing this career. And that was like, okay, that feels more in alignment. And I'm writing a musical, that feels more in alignment. And then it was the musical. But then, and then to be perfectly honest, I had a fiance at the time who was also in recovery. And we met detox. I wrote a song called Halfway House Gem. You know, like it was
age-old story.
Yeah. And he also helped a lot in a variety of ways. And then when that went away, when my musical things weren't happening for the musical, when I started to feel uneasy, I had like a mental health breakdown, right? In 2018, 19, you know, because I felt lost and I didn't feel connected to my musical anymore. I didn't feel connected with my partner at the time. I just didn't feel connected to the recovery community. I didn't feel like I had a place or a space that I belonged. Luckily, still something inside of me said, but you're here to do more. So I think that voice inside of me, called spirit, God, the divine, whatever, higher self, there was a voice that was like, no, but you gotta keep going. You just can't stop. Like, and even when when I wanted to, like, I just wanted to drink, right? It's like, but no, actually I don't, because I know what's going to fucking happen, which also made me angry, because I was like, I know what's going to happen, you know? It's like, well, you have to just sort of stick through it until the tides change, until something shifts, right? And then I sent myself to Europe for a little while at the end of 2019. And then in 2020, the pandemic hit, right? And we were all grounded. We, for the most part, a lot of us had to stay at home. The theater world, my theater world, the thing that I was chasing with Broadway, shut down, right? And what I came to realize is like, why do you write, Elizabeth? Why are you doing this? You know? And so I decided to go back in on This Is Treatment. I decided to like figure out a way to love my main character, who was inspired by me, which for years people didn't like because I didn't like her. I didn't even love her, you know, and that took a time to do. But I said, I'm going to focus in and I'm just going to pour out as much love as I can muster, as well as I started a spiritual book called A Course in Miracles, which is all about love and forgiveness and peace and all those sorts of things. That changed me dramatically, because I really was like, I'm here to love. That's what I'm here to do. You know, and love can be fiery and exciting, and like it can be so many things. It can be strong. It can be angry at times. And I'm like, but it's a longer burn, you know, than fear and the doubt and the anxiety that I was sort of living with before. And then things started to just happen. Things started to just happen for my work and for myself. And then I also in 2020 took Recovery Coach Academy through CCAR. And they were all about strengths-based and all about, you know, being a resource and adding value to wherever you go. So it's all this stuff around love, essentially, right at the core. It's all about love. And that's, and finally being able to say, I trust my recovery. So that's what shifted. There are a few years in there that were really rocky, but there's something in me that's like, just keep holding on, just keep holding on, just keep holding on. So I did. And now I see the world through the lens for the most part. Sometimes I'm fearful. Well, a lot of times I'm fearful, but I'm able to find my way back always to love. And that is how I operate. And that is my religion, I would say, and that is what my recovery is grounded in today.
It's interesting that, you said you were waiting for somebody to give you permission to grow into what it is that you were growing into. But what I heard was you found that permission within yourself and something bigger than you, but it was like you who had to give you that answer, right? And it's a lot of times it's us that kind of need to walk on that path and walk in that faith. And I think that was a big part of like maturation. So to think about like recovery, I got 10 years sober, and that sounds like a lot of time. But I was reflecting on this the other day. Like, I'm not even a teenager. Like I'm still, and I really feel a lot of times that I'm bumbling around. And I think I feel like I'm hitting a point of confidence because I've had a little bit of experience that has given me a reference point. But at first, I didn't even have a reference point for how things could go because I just didn't have it, So now there's a few things where it's like, I'm not gonna call nobody. I'm just gonna do this because I know. Like, but that knowledge comes from the experience that I've had. But when we don't have that experience, it can be very, very scary to move because that path isn't clear. But that thing that you spoke on, that thing, that pull to like, yo, there's something bigger that you're here to contribute to. And I've also heard it. I've heard it described in a lot of ways. I tend to kind of not tap dance, but like really be careful when it comes to divinity or like something bigger because it shows up in all different type of ways. and some people may say that they don't experience it at all, but then you'll hear them describe like, and I did this thing. And I'm like, well, who gave you permission to do that? And it's like, well, I don't know. I just did it. I just felt right. It just felt right. It felt right. That feeling, so that's a tangent. I don't really have, usually I got like a cool thing that brings it around, but that's what you brought up in me by sharing your story.
I want to just piggyback, like when you're talking about how you're not even a teenager, like kind of comparing that recovery journey to your just as a child developing almost. Like it's funny that you said you used that kind of metaphor because I was thinking, like Elizabeth, when you were talking about in the beginning how you needed that fear, you needed that kind of like the breakdown piece, and I'm picturing a parent and like a little kid. And how there's a balance when it comes to how much a kid should like quote unquote fear their parent, but there has to be just enough to keep them safe. Because like if I go running into the street and my parent yells at me and I don't have I'm just like, whatever, yelling is not going to affect me at all. I could run in that street and, it could be a car and obviously terrible things can happen. But if I have just the right amount of fear of like, maybe I don't understand what could happen if I run into the street or touch the stove or whatever, because I have no frame of reference, like you're saying, Bryce. But I know that I don't want to get in trouble with that person who's yelling at me right now. So I'm going to stop. And that keeps me safe. And then there will be a day that like that balance changes, that fear versus like inner trust, where like, I've certainly made choices in my life that my parents, I don't think they've yelled at me, we just don't have that relationship. But like they've certainly said things that in the past I would have been like, oh no, I'm making my mom mad, But I also have chosen to trust what's inside of me because I've built up enough trust that I've that balance shifted and now I can cross the street because I know that I can look both ways, So anyways, I just want to take that metaphor and be like, me too. I'm totally thinking about it that way.
And you didn't have to get hit by a car in the process.
I know, how nice.
Well, I think that that's something that we want to encourage people to find, to have, to grow into, is that here are some tools, right? That you can utilize. You can put in your recovery capital. Like, here's something that you can utilize. And the goal, though, is that you will learn how to trust yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And then you'll trust, like, okay, well, I'm going through this experience right now, and what is beneficial for me? Could I do this? Could I do that? Like you've done the work and continue to do the work, but to just trust yourself. I mean, I don't really like that and that and that. And being able to do that, being able to say that, like to be able to say in 2020, like, I trust my recovery, to be able to like even, and I'm coming up on February? Yeah, I'm coming up on 12 years, right? And so to be able to still, like, occasionally feel the desire to drink, but also something very simple that I say to myself is, Elizabeth, we've had that experience already. We don't need it again. We don't need it again. And it's that simple. And then I let it go. Because I don't need to be like, oh my God, why? I'm almost 12 years. Why are the dreams still happening occasionally? Why? I'm like, because it's okay. You're okay. Like, and to sort of like just...
You're okay.
to tell yourself you're okay. And usually, like, if from that space, I can then go, well, what happened there? Oh, I was longing for community. Oh, I was da-da-da-da-da. Oh, I was going through... Okay, got it. Cool. Moving on.
That alone right there is an indication of somebody that can really plant the seeds of transformation in others. And I want to shift a bit to like how you do that. Because even sitting here talking to you and just like secondhand, you talking about the experience that you've had with yourself and the way that you've held yourself, like without us being one-to-one and like, okay, what are you going through? Like I'm taking from you sharing your experience, like, oh yeah, I should probably soften up a little bit or, you know, allow myself to unfold in these ways. And so when working with others, one, how do you work with others? And two, how do you share that with other people?
One of the rules of being a recovery coach is managing your own stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And that means that I have to make sure that I'm doing my own work so that I can be of service in a way that is beneficial to my recovery, to whoever that I'm serving in that capacity. And then being a trauma-informed group facilitator is about holding that space for people, right? So that we're facilitating a process of learning and being peers, being available, listening, all those sorts of things. And so to do that means that I stay up on my spiritual work, my specific spiritual texts. I work out a lot because I know it's good for my mental health, you know? And that actually keeps me in it longer because I know it's good for my mental health, you know? And a byproduct is getting some muscles, which makes me happy. But also writing is wonderful. Writing musicals and then actually like hearing people reflect it back. You know, I sit in this room at a piano for hours, for months on end, not knowing what the heck I really have, right? Feeling all the things, crying into the music, laughing into the music, all those sorts of things and hope that somebody will get it, that somebody will feel what I feel. And then when I give that music away to somebody to sing and I see something that I wrote reflected back at me, there's a healing that's there that is so profound, that is so beautiful. And I think that, you know, something that keeps me in the work of development, of growing, is that I'm curious. You know, I'm curious about life. I'm curious about others. I'm curious about helping people. And when you're curious about life and when you're sort of a seeker also, then there's always possibilities and opportunities to learn and to grow. And then something that's really deep within me is that means that I'm to give that away too. Right? So like anything that I learn, I'm going to give it away. You know, like I feel like we are truly here to be grounded in love and to be of service to others.
And that's
what I truly believe.
And that is like, there's a sense of individualism that we learn to lean into when entering into recovery or when looking to unfold, when looking to discover our internal voice and our internal compass. And then there's also the dance of our relationship with human connectivity. And I mean, even this specific episode, like there's two humans that we've had on this show. Meghann Perry was on the show when we were live with Meghann Perry in Des Moines, Iowa. And she came on to talk about having fun in recovery and her relationship with storytelling. You know, and Andy Short, he's just always on. He's a great dude. But it's like if Meghann Perry wasn't led to take what it is that she learned and create the storytelling training that she created, you know, then you wouldn't have had that storytelling training. You know, if both you and Andy weren't pulled to share and learn from people who are acting and into theater, then y'all wouldn't have met each other and y'all wouldn't have been in the same space. And it's like this, And all of that helped each and every one of you like develop and evolve into who it is that you are as a person individually. And it's just such a beautiful like web that I feel is expressed like here in this moment, like on this actual podcast episode.
This is making me think of, yes. This is making me think of, and not everybody is connected to it, but if you are connected to that sense that you're here to do something, right? Like a sense of purpose, something, right? Whatever the language is around it, that means that it is for you. How do I say this? It is meant to serve somebody else, right? And so I think that whatever the calling is, whatever it is that you feel like you're here to do, if you have the ability to do that, whatever that is, that means that somebody else needs it. It's linked to somebody else's liberation, linked to somebody else's journey, that recovery journey, that whatever, Yeah. And so for me, since I was a child, since I was like 12 or 13, well, since I was a child, I was always a ham. So I was always dancing and singing and performing and stuff like that. There's pictures of me like just ready to go. The other day, Dina and DJ over at the Phoenix in Boston asked me for my autograph. and I was just like, they're like, has anybody ever asked for this before? And I'm like, well, yes. But I said, I was like, yeah, and I've been practicing that autograph since I was 12.
Amazing.
But when I was 13 and I saw Rent for the first time, which is a musical that like just changed the game in 1996, I saw myself, right? And I wanted to do that thing. I wanted to tell a story about the challenges that I was experiencing with my father's addiction, right? And how that affected the household. And I said, okay, well, I don't know how to do it, but in my late 20s, I'm going to figure it out as though it was just going to happen, right? But upon reflection, the seed had already been planted. Something was already in me when I saw it, right? It sort of prompted something in me when I saw Rent. It was like, oh, wait, that's what you're supposed to do, Elizabeth. And you're going to tell a story about addiction and how that affected you. I didn't know it was going to be about my life in addiction and my struggles with substance use challenges, and my recovery. I didn't know that part. I thought it was about my father. My father isn't anywhere in my shows.
Wow.
Not really, right? But I was being told, I had a moment where I saw it, right? And it took some time and I had to go through what I went through. And because representation really matters. And unfortunately, to this day, there are very few Black women who we know of that write musical theater in terms of like being famous for it, right? We know about like Lin-Manuel, who's a Latin Puerto Rican man. We know about. Can y'all name any Black women who write musicals that you know of?
What is it? Ava DuVernay? No,
Director. I think she writes screenwriter. But in terms of like that world, which that world is a little niche, but like in terms of that world, there's a lot. There are Black women writing musicals who write book, music, and lyrics, but they aren't really represented, right? Like, and so for years, and definitely back then, didn't see anybody. And so for years, I was like, well, it's only a white man's game. And I have no idea how to do any of this. And I'm not good at piano lessons, and I suck at school. Everything in my life told me that the dream that I had, I couldn't accomplish. Recovery was the first thing that said, maybe you could.
Wow.
Right? And so, because it planted the seed of like just showing up day by day, having some faith, and then that calling, that thing, I started to show up. And once I started to show up, things started to happen. And now, like, I don't know anybody who doesn't know me as a musical theater writer if they know me.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, what? Okay. And now the opportunities that are arising from these musicals to share them, I've shared them with over hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people at this point. But the opportunities that keep revealing themselves to me in ways in which they've helped people, from like seeing your show help me finally have a conversation with my mother about her addiction and how it affected our family, all the way to helping somebody find treatment, right? Like, all these sorts of ways in which the work is working on others, because it first worked through me. And I said, yes. You have to say yes to the calling, and then you have to get to work. You have to show up for it, even when you resist it, because there's a lot of resistance. But you got to show up for it knowing. And I think that's one thing that's really powerful within me. I'm anchored to my why, and my why is to be of service to others. I want people to find recovery, whatever that means for them.
Yeah.
I want people to pursue whatever dream they have on their heart, whatever calling is on their heart. I want people to thrive, not just survive. Yes, we'll help you get to that point of surviving, but I want you to thrive.
Yeah.
I want you to do well. I want you to be happy. So.
And you believe it. And you believe, and you like,
I believe it.
The way you say that, like, I believe you. I mean, I believe that too, personally, but also like, even if I wasn't part of this, community and work and everything, like we need you, because when you say that, people will listen and believe you. And the fact that you're able to express that in this conversation, and then also in music and in theater, because that's the first thing, right? Like when you're struggling, when you're in pain, whether it's with substance use or any other hard thing you're going through, if you don't believe that you are going to be able to get through it, that there is another way, then like you got to be able to believe it, or you got to be able to hear somebody else believe it so hard that that'll at least allow you to take that next step. And not only are you out there like believing it so hard that like people are taking that next step, but then you're also doing it in a way, like this is the power of music and creativity, is that you're helping people draw something out of themselves that you also can like show them like super tangibly. Like you think that you're, all these terrible things that you think about yourself, and like all this, evidence to the, choices that you've made, whether how much of is your fault versus not, which that's a whole conversation that I have strong feelings about, but it's look, this beautiful thing came from you, there's just no refuting that, like that yes, there is this beautiful thing inside of you. It is you. Let me show you this mirror. So take the step forward, even if it's just because that one little thing. Anyways.
Yeah, no. And I love that. And something, so I had a musical, Chasing Grace, which is like an amalgamation of a treatment story and chasing Broadway and losing yourself to find yourself again, and like sort of integrating all those different aspects of yourself, learning how to love the little you that was going through all the trauma and the hard things at home, to the person that struggled with substance use, had substance use challenges, to the person that, like, all those different parts that still exist within us, right? The body remembers. There are stories within us that need to be brought up, to be looked at. If we think of narrative therapy, like, we bring up the story and then we look at it and we deconstruct it to reconstruct a new one, or at least a different perspective on it, right? Maybe perhaps through the lens of compassion, through the lens of like understanding and stuff like that. And how difficult it is to look at yourself through a lens of compassion when you might have done things that you're not necessarily proud of, that you might have some shame around, when you have struggled. Like, something that I tend to like to tell people is that, I really need you to understand that, yes, we can hold space for, being accountable, taking responsible and being accountable to the things that you did. But also at the time, we have to understand that you really did do the best that you could at that time. And now we can choose to do something different and here are some tools.
Yeah.
Right? Here's a process to learn something new, something different, to practice something different. I will lovingly take your hand, and I do this with my musical, Chasing Grace, this is treatment. So I will take you to that mirror, but I'll hold your hand with you and invite you to look. Just look and let's see what we see. And if you don't like what we see, we can figure out something different, right? We can talk about it. Here are some things that can help you with that or whatever. But first you have to look, but maybe we can do it in a way that isn't so harsh, but that sees you beyond perhaps where you see yourself currently, and you'll be okay, because we can do that in community, right? So that's the thing that I love about theater is, so with Chasing Grace, I don't hold back any punches. I'm very, very much like telling it how I see it in a variety of ways. But I think that with writing, you can take great care of your audience, even if you're showing them the truth. Right?
Yeah.
You can take great care. You can do it through the lens of compassion.
Yeah.
You can hold their hands to some degree, but also trust that they need to have these experiences. They need to feel it. They need to see it. They need to wrestle and grapple with all of these different things. And at the end, you will get a healing but you're also going to be okay. Like, you've got to be okay. Right.
That's such a skill. That's such a, that's such a beautiful, like, to be able to tell a story in that way that is holding someone's hand throughout, that does allow them to feel big emotions, but also takes care of them. Like, that's a beautiful, thank you for saying that.
I feel like, so there's a couple of things going on here. One, Liz and I have not co-hosted in a while, so I don't know if we know how time works anymore, because we'll keep you for like 3 hours, I promise you. Two, you just have, there's so many things about you that, like, I know that our listeners will love to dig in deeper on. So we're just going to have you back for sure. But for the sake of time, I am going to ask you a question, and then we're going to get out of here. So if you could go back in time and choose any iteration of Elizabeth, or you can go in the future too, and tell that iteration of Elizabeth a piece of advice, a suggestion, a comment, etc., what version of Elizabeth would you grab, and what would you tell them?
Sweet baby. I'm thinking if I would be talking, I feel like I'm always in conversation with my past selves through the work that I do, because it's always like learning how to love up on them. So I think I'll go to my future self.
Ooh.
And what I'll do is have my future self give me advice that I'm currently at. Right? I would have my future self tell Elizabeth today, it's all going to work out. Trust the process.
That's a way to flip the question. I don't think nobody ever flipped the question like that. That'd be great. I just envision myself going to my future self. So what are we doing? He's like, I don't know. What do we do?
I envision. So I don't know. I didn't really watch the Grammys last night, but I've seen the little clips, and there was Tracy Chapman up there, whatever. And I was like, there's some older women who I see, and they just look like they're good. Like, they're grounded, they're spiritual, they have like this understanding of the world. They see I feel the same way about Felicia Rashad. You know, like there's some people that I just see and I'm just like, there's that. And so I can see my older self. I can see my 80-year-old self just sitting there looking at me sometimes and just being like, Elizabeth, you know? And then I also, what helps me is like to take care of myself in a way, though I'm still working on it, so that I can get to her, you know? So I feel like I'm always in relationship with all these different parts. Past me, present me, future me. We're all sort of dancing together.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us today. And thank you all for listening. Liz, I forgot how to end the show. How
That's okay. Well, you know, one thing that we didn't get to that we'll put in the show notes, and again, we're going to have Elizabeth back, is some more information about, we'll put information on how to find Elizabeth, the incredible embodied songwriting workshops that she facilitates at the Phoenix. We will link to those because you're going to want more from Elizabeth, and we know that. So we will make sure you have a way to get there. So we will definitely get those to everyone. But yeah, just to echo, thank you, Elizabeth. It's been really amazing to have you here. It was the best way to come back into this space and start podcasting again. And yeah, for everyone listening, keep subscribing. Even though we took a break from recording, there was no break from actual published episodes, and there will not be. Every Tuesday, you can find us at wherever you get podcasts, and we will see you next time.
Catch you next time.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.